And we welcome you in for Hour 3 of America's Forum with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth. And we should note that the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee will mark up a bipartisan Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, reform bill today. That bill is introduced jointly by Congressman Darrell Issa and Elijah Cummings.
And joining us now is Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. He is also joined by Congressman Darrell Issa,
my old pal.
Everybody.
You bet.
Hi, you've got the whole gang here, and I want to thank you for covering the important upcoming markup of our FOIA legislation.
Yeah, you know, Darrell, a lot of times, and especially now, everybody responds, well, Republicans are fighting Democrats. But this is truly bipartisan legislation, with you and the ranking member sponsoring this. Tell us more about it.
Well, Elijah Cummings and I have both seen that the best way to get transparency is to have the American public at the table asking questions, particularly when it affects their own lives. And we've seen under both Republican and Democratic administrations a reluctance to do so and the need for reform. And so in the last Congress, Mr. Cummings and I joined together and basically put together something that was broadly approved of by virtually every member of the House, and to be candid, the members of the Senate. It passed out of the Senate, but there were differences in the bill that caused it to, as we like to say, die at the end of the session. And we're going to make sure that these are addressed early, and we think we can get bipartisan, bicameral legislation, which is how you get something to the president.
Ford, do you agree with that?
Chairman Issa, transparency and the federal government are an oxymoron. What do you hope to accomplish with this bill, and what other steps could the federal government take to be more transparent? Because let's be honest, this is a good step forward, but the American public is really concerned.
Well, one of the most important provisions that Mr. Cummings has agreed to, Mr. Chaffetz, the current chairman, and myself, is to make sure that if there's an unreasonable defense, in other words, often historically, cabinet officers and sub-cabinet positions, things can be embarrassing. So they defend under some weak argument of security or even law enforcement sensitive. If they prevail, that's fine. But if they lose in court, as they often do, and judges say this was unreasonable, then under this modernization, the government will reimburse those fees. And so whether you're a small individual or the Associated Press or anyone in between, ACLU, you don't have to risk spending money when you know that all they're doing is forcing you to spend money and trying to discourage and delay your discovery. And we think that's a very important provision because, as you know, it's hard to explain to the boss that you had to pay because you made a false defense. And we think that's going to make a difference both at the cabinet level, but also at the full presidential level. No president wants to hear that his defenses were frivolous and that he's paying fines to the ACLU or the Associated Press or thousands of other plaintiffs who have been wrongfully denied the information they've asked for.
But FOIAs have been filed before, and they've been ignored. So why are you so confident this time?
FOIAs are sometimes ignored, and obviously that's when you go to court. The fact is, this is step by step. Before the Freedom of Information Act, it was presumed essentially that the government told you what they wanted to tell you. Today, the government knows that if they don't answer with specificity your questions, you'll go to court. If you have to go to court under this modernization, your government may pay for your fees necessary for you to get to the truth. Is it perfect? Of course not. Are there times in which the government has an absolute right to say we're not going to tell you who our CIA operatives in some country are? Of course. But we want those to be based on specific limitations that were in statutes. We're not changing the statute. We're not changing the reasons that the government may withhold certain information. What we're doing is providing a mechanism for people to get more often to the truth and hopefully get to it quicker.
Hey, Darrell, I hate to be the skunk at a garden party, but I went in when there was supposed to be some bipartisan legislation on the Endangered Species Act, and at the 11th hour, the Democrats pulled their support on the bill. Are you sure that Elijah and the Dems are not getting pressure from the White House to step back from this markup today? About 30 seconds.
Well, you know, there always could be, But here's the reason I don't think so. This president's in the final days of his presidency, 500 or so days left. The fact is, this legislation is going to primarily affect the next president, and groups like the ACLU are telling Democrats, we need this legislation just as much as the National Rifle Association needs this. We need this so we can get to the truth about what government's doing to us. So that's what makes it essentially bipartisan, and I'm confident we're going to get even a stronger bill this Congress than we did last Congress.
And thus today's markup. Chairman Darrell Issa of California, we thank you for your time. Coming up, more politics on America's Forum.